da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. Today was a little bit of both. Stayed mostly with myself today, even in the inside. So it was a contemplation day for me. You know, not only am I out there picking up on different perspectives and feeling my way around in different ideas, different thought leadership, different religions, different spiritual ideas. I try to stay out of the political stuff, and it's an honest way for me to stay focused in what's important because, I could be spread out everywhere. I have a very curious mind. And lots of things get my attention. Hello, Eugene. Hello. First in tonight, dear. Oh, and there's Tammy. I hope you guys are having a great night. Let me know how the weather is going on in your city. And especially, I'd like to know how the smoke is, right? Like if you guys are being affected in any way with the smoke and the firefighters that are going on here in Canada. Today in Winnipeg, it was a perfectly dreary day in all honesty. And I had intended to go for a walk, but my sister, once a week, we've been making, I don't know, little date days, right? Where we can get together. I do a little bit of housework for her. I make a late lunch or an early dinner, depending on how you want to look at it. And we get to spend a little bit of time together, have some conversations. Cindy gets to practice her craft, not in a preachy way, because she wouldn't allow that. She would shut me down in a moment. But I appreciate how my sister is being open, being willing. And I think, that's all that's really asked of us, in the end, is just to be willing to be pulled into some different ideas. Today, just kind of stuck with my own ideas. Just contemplated. It was a dreary day. It was supposed to be thunder, lightning, and rain all day. But I had said if there was a little interlude that I was just going to try and get some fresh air. But my sister phoned me and she said, well, let's have our date day here, our date lunch, right, this week. And she always picks the meal and I always cook it. So we're having Chinese food this Wednesday. So I'll go over to her house. We have a nice visit. Like it's a really nice visit, right? And it makes her feel good, especially when she's cooped up in her apartment. She can't go very far. She's in a boat, so she's not even in a cast yet because she's got a sore in her foot. So the doctor won't even cast her up until the sore is healed. And it's depressing for her. And I get it. We all have struggles, but we shouldn't always be struggling on our own. It's nice when you have people that you can talk to, people that you can rely on, people that you can trust, right? That you can connect with. And it really is important. I actually bumped into somebody on my walk today. I had to go get some groceries for our Chinese food. So I had to go to a few different stores, but I could have all got it in the same store if I wanted to pay a couple extra dollars. But it was an excuse for me to get out because again, I can get cooped up very easily too. We are being affected, Cindy, not blaming anyone. The US has plenty of wildfires going on too. That happen every year. Yeah, I feel so bad for these provinces. They're really struggling, and not just the provinces, these communities that are being evacuated for their lifelong homes are just burnt to the ground, right? There was nothing that could be done because they live in the wilderness. They live way up north, and there isn't a great access to the technology, right? Yes, we have the water planes and we can send up the firefighters and the forest fires up there, and very grateful that the other provinces have pitched in and offered to help. Not even offering to help. They just, pull up their pants, let's go, right? And nobody's going to refuse that help for sure, especially when there is this great need. I mean, these are communities. These are our communities, a part of our communities, and it's heartwarming in a way too, because it's extending ourselves so they actually feel like they're not in it all by themselves. They can see that people are trying to help. But it's got to be super devastating losing all your belongings, only having enough, because you have to get flown out, right? So, you're only taking suitcases. You're not packing up the truck and hauling yourself out of there. A lot of these places are only accessible in the wintertime by anybody outside their community, because they wait for the ice roads for the lakes to freeze over where they can actually take trucks out onto the ice, and they make the ice roads. So it's kind of sad because they're losing all their lifelong possessions, not just their homes, right? But all those keepsakes. And we all have keepsakes. We all have those memories that we store in the cupboards and in the drawers, right? Hopefully, we're pulling them out every once in a while and letting ourselves delve into our emotions a little bit. And that can be shadow work too, and going into those sad memories and good memories and fun memories. But of course, there's always sad memories, right? That's why we keep these mementos. And it's important because it's important for us to stay soft. And we live in a world right now that is just testing us right and left. And lots of people can cave in on that, and they just, "Oh, whatever," right? And then they just give up on themselves, or they give up in the situation. And it's wonderful that miracles do come in, but lots of times it is an extra effort, right? And lots of times we have to make sacrifices. We all have to make sacrifices. That's the truth. But I'm sorry to say, do are you guys wearing face masks for the smoke where you guys are? I know that smoke is not good, on the lungs. It might be a good idea. We want to keep Tammy, you guys, and Eugene, all you guys, nice and healthy, that you guys could wear the face mask. Even here in Winnipeg, I've seen people wearing the face masks. And, it makes me a little bit nervous because, of course, these are mementos of the past, right? And that past is still pretty fresh, isn't it? It hasn't had a chance to scab over in a way so it can become like a distant memory. It does stir memories. We got shut down pretty hard, and lots of people are still struggling in what happened in the beginning of the 2000s, right? And yeah, I'd like to think that was a, well, it's not the new 2000s, but 2020, right? When it all started with COVID and we all got shut down. But these difficult lessons, you guys hear me say it all the time, all these difficult experiences that we have are opportunities to look at them as lessons, right? Just not in really bad experiences. And lots of times, if we look at it as just a bad experience, we want to put it in the background as fast as we can and forget about it. But there are lessons in that. How can we better serve the northern communities when these forest fires happen? They're becoming more and more prevalent, and especially, yes, we have El Nino going on, and they say it's going to be a super El Nino, right? And this last one that we came out, we had what you I should Google it if I'm going to talk about it so I can have the dates down packed, but it wasn't too long ago, and we hit records in weather all over the world. But they say this one is going to beat all the records. They say the ocean is going to rise by like 2.7 inches. That's a lot of water. That's all glacier water being melted. But not only that, there's drought to deal with, and then of course the forest fires. And so we gotta just take care of our neighbors, and then just recognize that when these terrible experiences happen, that we can look into them as lessons, right? That next time this happens, what can we do? What can we put in place right now so that the next time this happens, we're better prepared, right? In all aspects. I was actually just checking in about some of the underground cities in the world. I didn't know the states have a couple of underground cities. There's one in Pennsylvania that they blasted right into the mountain. How many people did they say that one could hold? Oh my good, Raven Rock in Maryland, Pennsylvania. So if anything should happen, you guys, you start heading for that mountain, right? Because they made a city there. Beijing in the 1970s, they made an underground city too, an underground city that would hold 300,000 people. 300,000 people. That's a lot. That's enough to start a new world, right? If something should happen, that they were protected, because these underground cities were made up specifically for, well, when things did get tense, when the wars happen, bombs start going down, but also for temperature control. Like that, the one city in Turkey, it was meant to hold like 20,000 people, not just 20,000 people, but they had stables, they had air vents to the surface, they had wells built in. I can't imagine if it's like built underground. How would you make a well? Because you go underground and the well surfaces, right? So I'd have to do a little bit of research on that. Maybe they were natural springs or things that are leaking out of the rock. But they had corrals and stables for the animals, and that's a lot of people. But also, they are saying that we should consider the underground plazas, right? And there are lots of that underground malls. Even in Winnipeg here, they're talking about taking it down. I think it's already been approved. Because of the weather, it makes it accessible where we can go to different malls and different stores along Portage Avenue, which is the main drag in downtown Winnipeg, without having to go outside at 40 below zero. The thing is, there's a corner, Portage in Maine is supposed to be the windiest corner in all of Canada. And it is windy. It can blow you, but it's like wind tunnels there with all the skyscrapers downtown. So the wind, when it comes, It's just wicked. So they make these underground malls and plazas underneath the ground so that you can walk underneath downtown to get to wherever you want, to another department store or to the convention center, you know, to wherever you need to go without having to go outside where it's really in desperate need of a little bit of heat, especially in the wintertime. It's kind of crazy. But also, Quebec has one. And what did I say in Quebec? Oh, I didn't make any notes in Quebec, but they've got one, and so does France. France has got catacombs and stuff, right? So there are lots of places out in the world, and I think maybe all of us should be doing a little bit of research. I know where there's a very, very large bunker in the meridian of a busy road here in Winnipeg. It was kind of, well, I was in the military, so it was shown to me, right? I never saw it, I never went down or anything like that, but they showed me the spot and said if anything ever happened, that's where you that's where you want to go, right? But they took down our base here in Winnipeg. I think it was in 2002, all of them went out to Shiloh and Brandon. So we lost our military base here. And it was wonderful, having a base in the city and get to have um, that community that I belong to too, because my husband was in the military, right? But it was a great source of money. But because we're such a big city and to have such a big base right in the city didn't really seem feasible because the guys were always going out to the field for training out in Brandon and stuff anyway. So it kind of made sense that the base would be moved, not just for the sake of saving some money, which I'm sure that was a big part of it, but also to keep the standards high, right? That the guys wouldn't get themselves into trouble when they had time off. You know how guys are. Guys are guys, right? Yeah. But I thought it was really, really interesting. But they didn't just do it for, it was to protect the inhabitants from invading armies and stuff, but it was also for the weather. And so there's solutions out there, So once we get into global warming, we didn't survive the last one. We've had like six mass extinctions in this world, somehow a few of us, not in this form as humans, I don't think, but as well, maybe, right? If you look at the story of Noah's Ark, because you would consider the story of Noah's Ark as one of those extinctions for sure. And those were Homo sapiens, those were human beings, right? So at least one of those mass extinctions did happen in a remembered time where it could actually be documented. But that's six of them, you know, that's a lot. That's a lot. And that for sure says we are not done yet, that somewhere's down the road something else is going to happen, and we have to look for these solutions now. Like Elon Musk is looking for solutions. A lot of people are kind of standoffish with some of his ideas, but if there was a place like on Mars or on the moon, or if they did have big galactic cities out in space, there's an idea, right? But they're ideas, and you have to move towards these ideas. Otherwise, they just become just ideas. So when I was going for a walk today, I was just kind of in my head, right? And just thinking about life in general, not just in my life, my family's life, my community's life, right? Lives within my community and out there in the world with people that I don't even know. People who are not even got brain farts going on in their head about some of these topics I seem to get so curious about. But that's the idea, I have to stay in my own lane and I have to trust that there are people like Elon Musk, right, that are the experts in their field, in what they do. And yes, it's an interest because it's part of history, right? But the future at some point is going to be history too. And because you guys know I'm so big on evolution, that, it is an interest, it is a topic, it is, we should all have our work that we love, right? And we should have our interests that we love. And we should have our hobbies that we love, right? And this makes for a well rounded life when we combine it with family, right? Living our best lives, because that's a part of the creation of creating our best lives. And my work, my interests, and my hobbies are going to be totally different than anybody else. And you guys hear me every once in a while talk about that village where everybody in the village comes to the village with something that they can contribute with, right? There's the blacksmith, right? There's the baker, there's the candlestick maker, right? The dressmaker, right? That this is what makes it so that we have the strength, right? The knowledge, and not one person has all the answers, but coming to a group, we all contribute to that to make something survivable, enjoyable, right? And that's what I'm doing here, right? That we get to spend a little bit of time together. And I find this so enjoyable. And I hope you guys do. Let me have a sip of my juice before I go back into the conversation. I'll go into the comments here and see what everybody's yapping about. Oh, I went for a walk today. Oh, it was muggy. I didn't get rained on. It started raining right when I got to the bridge. And so I just stood under the bridge for a couple of minutes before the big rain went away. As soon as I walked out from under the bridge, a cloud disappeared and the sun was shining through. And I said, thank you, just for me. And I just started, and I walked home and I bypassed all the rain. And the moment I walked in the door, of course, there's a downfall, right? But, I missed the rain totally. And I got some great deals on some groceries. And I had a beautiful walk, and I stopped at the river. I always stop at the river on the bridge, right? And I hang over the bridge railing and, right, check out the ducks and what's going on at the forks, and appreciate the trees and the fresh air. And yeah, it's kind of nice, but at the same time, I'm not in the heavy. I'm enjoying the moment, right? But at the same time, in that contemplation and just being willing, right? Topics just kind of come to me. And this was one. This is why I've been doing a little bit of Googling tonight about the underground cities, just to see approximately how many of these underground cities we actually have. But it's correct, these underground malls have to be counted as a city, right? Because that's where I'm going to be heading for sure. Is down to Portage, Maine in the underground mall, right? They'd be able to sort us out for a little while anyway, right? But again, we have to think that sometimes these mass extinctions, they wipe out, and it takes hundreds of thousands of years. Now, it might only take a few hundred or 1,000 years for us to peek our eyes out outdoors again, but it's going to be a struggle. And we're going to need the blacksmiths and the bakers and the candlestick makers because it's going to take a while to get that electricity going again. um, oh, thank you. I appreciate all those little prayers that you send out there for my sister Tracy. I told her things are going to get better. Once they start getting better, it's going to be really, really fast. And things have been falling into place for her really well. The sore in her foot is healing really good. Our relationship is getting back on track. We right? I'm able to sit and have conversations and there is no friction between us, and I feel like I'm helping her out, because it's in that little drummer girl attitude that we have, that we can do a little bit of service, and I used to enjoy helping her out, right? And at the same time, she got a TV in her bedroom now, so she lays in bed with her air conditioning now. And all of this has been happening just in the past couple of weeks, right? So things are already picking up for her. So that's a good thing. So keep those prayers going, Tammy. It's much appreciated. My heart truly breaks and goes out to you, Cindy, and my friendly neighbor there in Canada. I am honestly not affected, right? Manitoba is holding its own in the moment. It's not that we don't have forest fires, but there are priorities in the country that are really struggling with the fires. So yeah, don't let your heart break for me, Tammy. I appreciate that, but if you want to send a little prayer to these communities up north, they sure could use it. I hope that there's some donations coming in and some resources through the government that they'll get a little bit of help. Our government is really, really good. The federal government is really good when it comes to taking care of those emergency situations that happen, right? They just don't help other countries, when they have their catastrophes, right? But, they're really good here at home too in making sure that, everybody is going to struggle the least amount as possible. Yeah. I see a lot of people using face masks, Cindy, here in Michigan. You don't wear them. Keep your lungs good, Tammy. I've got face masks and I won't have a problem using it on those really smoky days here. I will have face masks, and I'll probably take a box downstairs and set them on the benches in the lobby or something, just in case. We have lots of vulnerable in this building that, if there are some face masks available, they might use them, right? Lots of people, again, and putting those bad experiences in the past, that soon as that COVID was over, they just got rid of all their face masks. I had a hook by the door, like a coat hook where you put all your different jackets and coats up. But I had a hook up there, many hooks, and all these hooks had different face masks, considering, when I go to work, that I always wanted to match the face mask to whatever outfit I was wearing. It was pretty silly, but it was cute at the same time. But then, as soon as COVID was over, that was it. They were gone. I didn't get rid of all of them, right? Because that, again, I read into our experiences as lessons. And so I prepare in that. I'm not saying that any of that is going to happen, but if it should, then I'm not going to be sitting there with my thumb up my nose going, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Right? Like, when those those situations, I always work my best, when it's super stressful. I don't know what comes over me is kind of a calm in those situations when things go haywire and bad, and I usually make good decisions in those moments. But if you make those decisions and you don't have that prep done, it doesn't matter what kind of good decisions you made. You just didn't take any action on them. Again, it's that idea, it's just a thought unless you actually put that action into getting things done, right? But it's about taking a look at those crappy experiences that come into our lives and looking at them as if they are lessons, right? In the moment, it's painful, it's frustrating, devastating, heartbreaking, right? But once you're out of it, and you always come out of it, right? You always, it doesn't stay bad forever. It always gets to the point where it's tolerable, then it's manageable, right? And then every once in a while, the sun peeks through. Every once in a while, you catch yourself smiling or catch yourself laughing. And the next day, right, maybe you'll see a garden of flowers and life is good again, right? And that's what life is. It was like the best of times, it was the worst of times, right? But the idea is just keep moving forward, right? And just having the best attitude about it as you possibly can. But I do know that when those situations do hit, right? Everybody come running to me. When I was at work, anything went wrong. Just Cindy, what do we do, right? Because it would just be, okay, you guys, you go do this, you go do this, and sometimes, just in being able to designate out of a bad situation can make it better, right? Because lots of people, they go into those panic modes because there is no prep there. They don't look at their experiences as lessons, and they don't think, well, what can we do better next time if this should happen again? But I'm always, it's part of my hypervigilance, right? Right? You cover all your bases, and when crappy things happen, you go, okay, well, what do we do so this doesn't happen again? And if this does happen again, what kind of preparation can we have in place so that it's better manageable, right? It was like me, I would get in trouble. I make mistakes all the time in my life, right? But the thing is, I always learned from my mistakes. And I suspect, Tammy, you're one of these people too, right? That, something happens and you screwed up, or the situation got screwed up, and nothing you could do, ride the waves, do the best you can. Eventually you come out of it, right? But then you go, oh my goodness, that was pretty silly of me, or that was pretty dumb of me. I hope you do that in a nice way, right? But when you're dumb, right? And it's happened to me many, many times. But I always learn by that, right? It's what's that idea? You fool me once, right? Shame on you. Fool me twice. Shame on me, right? Well, I guess it's not pertinent to the conversation, but it's the same idea though. You make a mistake, right? Mistakes happen. You fail. Okay, what did you learn from that failure, right? What's the prep work so that you don't do that again? You don't like being embarrassed. You don't like looking like you're a fool, like you're not intelligent, that you're not up to the position, to the job that's been put into your hands. What can you do better next time? And if you're anything like me and you're hypervigilance, you work hard to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again. Doesn't mean that mistake doesn't happen again, right? But that is the process of learning, right? That's the process of learning. um Cindy, my oldest daughter lives in LA. I'm California, and she was there when the deadly wildfires hit them. I remember Canada and Mexico showed up for California, and it gets hot. And I remember those wildfires, Tammy. That wasn't too long ago either, when everything was going up in flames like that. That was big news here in Canada. Everybody was kind of glued to the TV on that one. Yeah, that was pretty scary, but that's what neighbors do, right? And even if you don't like your neighbor, like in the Middle East and stuff, you have people that are not friendly, countries that are not friendly with each other, but when they see people are suffering and struggling, they jump in and they help, right? In Iran, they don't get along with some of the other countries. But if you came knocking on their door and you were right part of their enemy list, they would welcome you in. They would dress you, they would feed you, they would sit and have conversations with you and treat you like your best friend before sending you on your way. It might be a different story if they met you down the street, then you guys would be back in that aggression. But they have values set up in place that, if somebody is in need, you treat them like a neighbor, you treat them like a friend, right? And Canada has always, right, been a good friend to the States, and the States has always been a good friend to Canada, right? Was what? Ever since 1812, the War of 1812. That was our last war, right? Because back then the states were looking to take Canada over. They were, and they didn't quite do it. But yeah, we had some diehards here in Canada that made sure that that wasn't going to happen. And I think it's a good thing too, right? This is a big continent, right? It shouldn't all be in one country's one country's hand. Yeah, it would make us a bigger target too. And Canada is like the youngest child in the family, right? So, any country came at us and hurt us, there would be big trouble. Like every country would jump on board and take care of business for Canada because I think we are well thought of in the world community, right? That, like I said, we're like the youngest child, right? But we earned that, right? We earned that right to be the youngest child. And maybe that could be looked at as a sign of weakness, right? Because we are kind and we're always saying sorry and stuff like that and taking blame for things. But it's not. We're just polite. We practice values here, right? We practice values. But it's getting close to being that to be, I think, the law at some point, right? Because again, like we're all so close to each other now in this age of AI technology and learning, right? That it's going to become a necessity that we have rules to the game, right? That we should have like the Constitution. We talked about that the other day, like the Constitution of values that we can all live by. I'm not quite sure, right? The right to bear arms. I don't know how you feel about that law, Tammy. I don't want to stir the pot in any way, but I have a problem with bearing arms only because in those stressful moments, in those moments of complete frustration, that people lose it, right? Like they mentally, like crazy town, lose it. But the instant they hurt somebody, right? There's that guilt and shame and regret. And if that gun wasn't there, it would have been a different story. Somebody wouldn't have died. Somebody would have gotten hurt. Somebody wouldn't have gone to jail for the rest of their lives. Some child wouldn't have been without their father who had to go to jail and grow up, and right, and it just gets passed down. And also the accidents, right, that accidents happen. I get it in protecting your property, right? I keep bear spray at the front door. I keep a big fish paring knife at my bedside. Like, yeah, right. There is that self defense, but sometimes the laws kind of go beyond, and there's nothing to do because it's part of the Constitution. And right, the Americans would go down before you ever played with the Constitution. But I think what we can do is maybe use the values and say, okay, well, you can't wear the guns on the street anymore. It's not the Wild West anymore, right? Just to help eliminate some of those opportunities to make momentary mistakes, right? Because my husband was in the military, and besides on parade day when the guys went on parade, I never saw guns, right? Even when the police officers walk the streets and stuff, they have their guns are secured and stuff. Like you're not getting at them. They keep them out of sight, but I'm sure they're pretty handy in the moment. So I never seen just the everyday Joe walking down the street with the gun. Though when I was working at the bar, one night a lady came in, and I don't know, she thought I was dating her boyfriend or something, and she wanted to know where her boyfriend was, and I had no idea. I think she was just high on drugs or super drunk or something, and she pointed a gun right in my face looking for her boyfriend. And I was on the second level, above the dance floor, and it's all covered by like great big bars, right, like a fence around the floor. And I just grabbed the bars and I just hopped over it like I was just a gymnast. I had never had an experience like that in my entire life. A couple of days later, the lady came into the bar again, and she didn't have a gun with her, but I remembered her. She came at me again, but she just came at me verbally. And when I told my husband what happened, he told me that, the first thing you do is you curl up your fist and you bring your fist down, right? You bring your fist down and you get a good swing out of that, and you hit them underneath the chin. So that's exactly what I did, and her chin went up and then her chin went down. I broke her jaw, right? I broke her jaw. Nothing came out of it, but she was sure angry, and she stirred the pot. She tried to get me in trouble, tried to get my job, and she tried to get me charged, right? Because I had hit her under the chin, but it was self-defense. She was in my face. 2 days earlier, she had a gun in my face, and there was witnesses to it. And I trusted the advice of my husband, and that's exactly what I did, and it worked. And that was a defense move that I never forgot, right? And if I ever get myself in that situation, I know exactly how to hit somebody to make them stop, because oh my goodness, that stopped that woman in her tracks, because her I went like that, hit her chin went up like this, and then it just went up, like it just hung down here, and all her skin got. It was scary. It was something like something out of a horror movie, and I don't mean to laugh about that, but it was in self defense. but I can't imagine, somebody having one of those moments where they can't control their emotions and then to destroy their life, the life in front of them, their children's lives, right? For something that if they had just a few more seconds to think about, they might have resolved the situation differently, even if it was just a fist under the chin. That wasn't the norm. I am non-confrontational for sure, but that was an exception. That was a scary situation that impacted me emotionally because I wasn't somebody who was familiar. I knew those people were in the bar, right? Because I served them. And, so I know there were some ruffians, especially towards the end, before they sold the hotel, before I moved to Edmonton, and they turned it into a lounge, which made it a lot easier. But it got pretty bad, and again those ideas, that people do make mistakes, rash decisions in the moment, but I don't think you'll ever be able to take that constitution out of the constitution, right? The right to bear arms, but maybe it can be modified in some ways. I'm not an expert, but it seems to me I heard something about some of the constitutions were changed a little bit. It put up a little uproar, but they were what do you call it, modified in certain ways. Um, you're talking so fast. I lost where I was. Uh, and then when Canada had their bad wildfires in 2023, I remember California and Mexico and Michigan showed up to help one of the provinces in Canada. Yeah, we are great neighbors to each other. We sure are. And if the Americans couldn't fight their own battles, like Canada would jump in because, well, we're like family, aren't we? And what affects the States definitely affects Canada too, in the end, doesn't it? Cindy, there are bunkers here in the U.S. and there are hidden tunnels. We hear. I have heard that those places are only for the elite and rich, and some famous people. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they do put money into these places. I was saying a couple of days ago I was checking out the cave homes in Portugal, in Spain, and I thought, "Oh, if there's global warming, wouldn't it be amazing to have a home but that was built into a cave?" Because they built those homes into caves because it kept the climate control really good, because those countries get really, really hot in the summertime, right? And so, I was kind of forward thinking, thinking forward a little bit. And I'm thinking, if global warming is happening, if there's ever that opportunity to get some land in a cave or to build a home inside of a cave, yeah, right, it's going to cost lots of money, but that would be something to make sure that the bloodline moves forward. Probably wouldn't be needed in my lifetime or my niece's lifetime or her children's lifetime, but somewheres down the road, right? It might be able to be utilized as a safe place to build a community while we are in a state of global warming where it's just too hot to be outside, right? That we could maybe have places that are already set up to that we could just in an emergency get in there and, right, everything will be okay. But, right, it's just a matter of keeping your eyes open, being willing to take in a little bit of information. And when we have those difficult experiences, just to take them as lessons, What do we do next time to make sure we don't get ourselves in this same doodle? Right? What can we do next time to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Yeah. Okay, let's come down in the comments and then we're going to pull a card. Um, yeah, I was working in a little thrift store with lots of vulnerable. I never got sick. I worked through the entire thing. Our store got shut down a few times, but being willing and if I felt any symptoms, I always went to get tested and stuff, and I had testing kits and and I never got the COVID. You know, everybody I worked with got it a couple times, and lots of times I had to work that store by myself. I remember there were 2 or 3 weeks there that it was just me and the main manager, and what a team we were, right? That we just took little breaks. We both were there when the store opened. We worked until the store closed at night, and we got the job done, and we had fun doing it, right? I had the best boss there. Oh my goodness, her name was Pearl. She was so amazing. Narcissist from hell, that woman was. But she would never ask anything of anybody that she wouldn't be willing to do herself. But you think I'm loud. Oh my goodness. She would be, oh, right? But oh, what a good friend she was. Like, you see the smile on my face? And when I say it takes all kinds to make the world, it really, really does, take all kinds to make the world. And you can't judge somebody because of their roughness in their lives. You really have to look past that at the intent, right? I always look at intent because lots of people are having bad weeks, bad days, bad years, right? And painful and physical, mental, emotional. And, right, people have a tendency just to diarrhea that out on other people. And that's the truth, right? And we should be able to hold, well, Tammy, as you as a caregiver, you know that when people aren't feeling good, they're cranky and they'll blame you or they'll want you to do the job for them. And sometimes we have to have a little bit of resilience in that and a little bit of compassion in that, right? There's a difference between being abused, right? Even if it's that abuse is by somebody who's really hurting bad. You got to set your foot down. That's what boundaries are for, right? And when people overstep, they overstep, and you're going to get it, right? But that's why values are so important when we work with each other. But also, it's important to feel out the intent. Did somebody really mean that? Or were they really hurting, right? Were they really struggling in their own lives? And that smile on Cindy's face, that good cheer, that energy, like I was like an energizer bunny, like all over the place, 100 miles an hour, right? Laughing and smiling and loud. And for somebody who's struggling, I get it. That can be like fingers on a chalkboard. And that's the truth. So I have to appreciate my role. And even though it's not with intent that I'm that way, I'm trying to stay optimistic for myself at the same time. And lots of it is just naturally happening without me knowing about it. It's not like I don't have struggles, but I just naturally am like that. But I have to appreciate that when somebody comes back at me, that I have to look at the intent, right? Did I do something wrong? Was I rubbing a wound that wasn't quite healed? Was I just too friendly and loud and positive when somebody was down and struggling and hurt? And, that's that idea, hurt people, right? But you have to feel out the intent, because there are people out there who just go for the jugular just because they can, just because it'll get them somewhere or make them feel like they have the power. As sensitives, we know those people too, don't we? Okay. Um, Me too, Cindy. I am calm in emergency situations too. We are the same, Cindy, and people look to me to help in those times and situations. I have this tendency. I feel it almost feels like slow motion, because I am an energizer bunny. I am loud. I am fast. I am sometimes quick thinking. But when those situations happen, and I understand that if it doesn't calm down, it could get out of control. And I understand that somebody takes the lead, and then other people will follow in that. So I find lots of times when those situations happen, I go right into a calm state, but not only is it a calm state, it feels like slow motion almost, right? I just take it down, just right. Everybody, calm down. Everything is good. You do this, you do this, I'll do this. We'll meet in the middle. If you have any problems, talk to so and so, or talk to me, or talk to so and so, right? And we manage to get through it. But if you're doing this hairy scary, they're looking you all freaked out in your hypervigilance of safety, because it's not like that hypervigilance goes away. That's part of keeping that under control and going slow, and in keeping a clear mind, because when you go fast, right, you're not keeping a clear mind. You're going 100 miles an hour in all aspects of yourself, emotionally, mentally, and physically, right? And nothing gets through. Nobody can even catch up to you to get any instruction, right, or to communicate anything to you in any way. So, most important is to keep that even keel, to keep it as balanced as you can in those situations. Right? It's like calming somebody down when they're having a they can't get their breath, right? And they just can't get themselves under control in their anxieties and stuff, that you could just, right? Your calmness sometimes will help to calm a situation down, or stop it from escalating up too high. Um, I only believe in the right to bear arms for people to hunt for their food, and for good cops, not bad cops, to have guns, etc. It's funny that you put that bad cops in there when you reference the cops. We don't call them cops here in Canada. We just call them the police. Sometimes they call them pigs, but that's the gangs and stuff like that. And I've never heard that terminology, but we just reference them as the police, right? And yeah, I don't hear that terminology, cops, very often, but you hear it in television shows and stuff like that. And you just mentioned them as cops now, but you also mentioned good cops and bad cops, right? And the only way I used that reference, good cop, bad cop, was when I referenced my parents, because they were like a team, but one was a bad cop and was a good cop, and it was kind of, so I understand what you're talking about. But if it's the police force, like, you expect that the government's got a good hold on them, right? That they're not getting away with stuff. But on occasion, right? Like, I hear on the news on occasion, these bad police officers, even in our own city, right? Like, confiscating drugs and then using it for themselves, or selling it to somebody else, right? That's a bad cop, but they get caught in the end. Nobody really gets away with anything forever. Yeah. Uh my heart truly breaks for all the school shootings that have taken place via the guns. Yeah, that's another one, right? The right to bear arms, right? Households here in Canada, we most houses don't have guns, right? They don't even have bear spray. The only reason I have bear spray is because I bought the bear spray because I'm always out on the trails and stuff all the time. So I needed it, but it's the perfect weapon, isn't it? So I just keep that at the front door, right? They're vulnerable everywheres. And like I said, we are, each one of us, the priority, right? But in that priority, I would hate to have a momentary, like, oh my goodness, there's nothing else I can do except blow that somebody's head off, and then, it's an instant later you go, oh my goodness, I could have dealt with it this way. And now I've got to live with the fact that I've killed somebody. I'm going to jail. My kid doesn't have a dad, right? And yeah, it's different. But then again, I live in Canada where there are very, very strict gun laws, right? You never see anybody walking down the street with a gun pouch or anything. If you did, you would be taken off to jail pretty fast. They're really, really fast. Okay, you guys, let's get into a card. If you've never hung out with me before, 54 powerful words, and and sometimes it's relevant to the conversation. Sometimes it's not, and we just go back into a different topic for a couple of minutes. Get my hair out of the way. Just had a shower, so it's still wet. And then that's the end, and I'll be back tomorrow. This is a live show that I do Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Central. And yeah, it's a nice little community that we have, right? It's something that I've been doing now for years and years, and I'm grateful for the company. But lots of times I'm just in here just by myself. Yesterday I was in here and it was just Andrew and Owen. Oh, and then Melvin. Oh, not Melvin. William popped in for a little bit, right? But it is summer and it's a slow season, and people are doing other things, and that's perfectly fine. And I understand that some of the topics I talk about are heavy, but I try to keep that positive energy in that, right? And it makes it so it goes down a little bit easier. And it's just food for thought, right? Food for thought. Yeah. It's how it worked for me. And it's just in my little way of giving back a little bit. Yeah. And keeping company. Okay, you guys, let's just get into a card here. The card for tonight is, oh, it's a beautiful word. We got this word, love. Love is the surrender to what feels like home, right? And it's important because we are so distrusting of everybody. We're even distrusting of ourselves. And the idea is to be willing. That's why you guys always hear me say all the time that how important it is for us to stay soft. We live in a day and age right now where divorces and relationships, as soon as the moment somebody ticks you off or leaves a towel on the bathroom floor, you go, you're out of here. I never want to see you ever again. There is no tolerance anymore, right? And we get hurt by that because you know, we get into these relationships because it stirs something up in us, but we wrap all our dreams and ambitions and goals, expectations, and we don't even take into consideration of those traditional ideas that each one of us as an individual have, and then we tie that into somebody else who on the norm getting off the shower, it's the norm to leave the towel on the floor so that it's understood not to use that towel. It's time to go into the, well, I guess they could throw it into the laundry basket, right? But not to use the towel because it's not clean anymore. The guy just got home from work and now it's all covered in tar or grime or something because he's a carpenter. He works construction in the streets, right? And so he just doesn't want to leave it lying around so somebody else needs a towel and they think it's nice and clean and they'll while he's watching his hockey game, his wife is screaming at him, "Bring me a clean towel. There's no towel here." Right? Because he's left it on the floor. Right? Now it's left on the floor. The wife sees that it's dirty. She's not going to say, "Oh, it's on the floor. It should be hanging up here." Right? No. She knows that it's dirty. She'll go get another clean towel. Bad, bad analogy, but that's the idea. It's just the idea that, people are not giving chances, right? They're not growing together in the relationships. They get stubborn, and yes, we're setting up boundaries for ourselves to hold our own, to let people know, but those boundaries should be expressed in the beginning of the relationship, not when somebody's moved in with you with their bags and set up house with you. Those boundaries should be expressed before any of these things ever happen. And then, when the troubles come, and the troubles will come, right? You see them through, right? And then, to understand that if something's not working for you in the relationship, that you should be willing to have those conversations and then not be a chicken poop, right? By saying, "Oh my goodness, I don't want to hurt her feelings. She's a good cook. She does my laundry. I'll just get me a side chick off on the side." And then what happens is she finds out about that and she's devastated in that. You're out the door. Your side chick goes, "Oh my goodness, he's a loser. Didn't even know he was married," right? And so the trust is hurt in the side chick's relationship. The marriage is broken down. The wife or the girlfriend that they've been living with is totally devastated and said, "I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to get in another relationship." And they tie themselves up and they make themselves go cold and they don't try again. But what if they have children? What if there are children involved in that? You're denying the children of possibly finding a new parent, or even better, if you can work through those problems, right? Make a weak marriage or a weak relationship strong, right? And to hold each other's up in your strengths, right? And to uphold those boundaries that are just as important in a relational relationship, and even more important, right? But to understand that we should be growing together. And then when things do go astray, when you say, "Oh, I made such a big mistake," right? I should have gone a little bit slower in the relationship, and then I would have really got to know what this person was like before I invited him to be my husband or my boyfriend and come and live with me and have children with. And now you feel stuck, and then you have a big blowout, and then you see you on the beach and you're out of my life, and then you have children that don't have a father or don't have a mother, or in that mother's sadness of what they've done to themselves, they, "I'm never going to do that again and not going to get in a relationship." They become tough on their children, right? Sometimes they do, and that misery loves company, right? They bring their children down. They even blame their children for that, right? If it wasn't for you, I would get married again. And they made that decision on their own. In this day and age, it's a really, I think, wonderful thing that lots of men out there are taking on the responsibility of being a father to other people's children, right? And but it all starts with that idea to surrender in what feels like home, right? And that husband that came home from that hard job at work and left that dirty towel on the bathroom floor because it was dirty, and he was thinking he was doing it out of consideration to his wife so she didn't accidentally use it when she had her shower. And the next thing you know, he's out on the streets with his suitcases, right? Because had absolutely enough. That he only did that because he felt like he was at home, right? But he didn't even get an opportunity to talk about it, to express that to his partner, right? It's in that investment. That's what relationships are all about, right? Is being willing to invest in that relationship because you want it to feel like it's home, right? And in the beginning of every relationship, that's that high energy. There's that excitement. There's those cute bums, right? Right? And that's the truth. But we have to remember that doesn't last forever. So there's got to be something more, right? That we appreciate in our partners. And that thing is that idea is this feels like the place that I'm supposed to be, and if there's something not working in it, we need to work in it, right? So it can go back to feeling like home, because that's what love is. Love is the surrender to what feels like home, and it's our responsibility to put that little bit of work in, right? To make sure that we are not ruining our homes, right? That we're not dispersing with the best thing that ever happened to us. And that's the truth. Love is the surrender to what feels like home. I haven't I haven't pulled that card yet, I don't think. I've had this working deck now for well over a year. I've been working with this deck, and some of these cards I've never pulled, and some of these cards I pulled like 20 times, and that's the truth. But it is what it is. First perspective that comes to my mind, and that's what I had for you tonight. Okay, the powerful word for tonight on Monday night is love. Have a good night, Cindy, and everyone else who is here or comes to your channel. Take good care there. Have a great week. Stay safe. Thank you so much. And you wonderful, have a wonderful week too, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great night.